Hey there, entrepreneurs, and welcome to today's episode. I am so excited to be joined by this gentleman. He has an amazing story that I know you will all love. And please welcome Henry Kaminski Jr. to the show. He is the founder of Unique Designz, which is a full-service design, branding, and digital marketing agency. And it's dedicated to helping personality brands, which I think is a very unique niche there and very helpful. He's the host of the Brand Doctors podcast, and he's worked with amazing people like one of my favorites, John Bon Jovi, as well as he's been dubbed the $1 Million Brander by Russell Brunson as he was being inducted into the 2 Comma Club. So thank you for being with me today, Henry.
What an intro.
I try. Like we said, I go back and forth. I don't want to read the whole thing, but I also want to highlight you because you're kind of kick-ass. So we're going to make sure we're going to hit the bullets.
You're getting you all right over here. Look at this. Makeup, please. Makeup.
I know. Yeah, someone will be right over to powder you up. if only we had a crew. Right. All right, my dear, you have a really amazing story. When I was listening to your videos and doing the research, you had an amazing start to life, which I have 2 medically complicated children. So I feel for your mom on that level, as well as, I know your parents were really influential. So why don't we just kick it off and you tell us from the beginning, what's driving you and how you got here in entrepreneurship?
Sure. I'm going to keep this really tight for you guys so we can get into the meat and potatoes. So when my parents got married, 40 something years ago at this point, they wanted to start a family and they couldn't. There was medicine wasn't the way it is today. And they really didn't understand what was wrong. And they tried for 16 years to start a family and they were unsuccessful. And as I don't know about any of you guys, but I don't know if I would do anything for 16 years in a row and continue to fail and get up and keep trying. I would, of course, corrected along the lines. I would have figured something else out. I would have looked for alternatives, but these 2 knuckleheads went at it for 16 years and was unsuccessful. And then medicine started to get a little better. And eventually it happened. And I was born and it was a blessing. And my mother always used to call me her miracle baby. And I never understood why. Well, now I get it. So once medicine basically showcased what the issue was, my mom went in for a short surgery and boom, 9 months later, here I come. Now, fast forward 2 years in, my mom's doing her thing in the kitchen. I'm sleeping in my crib and she comes in to check on me and I am blue and unresponsive. And so they rush me to the hospital and just to keep it tight, apparently I lost all the nutrients out of my body. I basically urinated all of the nutrients out of my body. And I was basically on death's door. Yeah. And they were able to revive me. And here I am 40 years later. So when my mom would tell this story to her girlfriends, it didn't really make sense to me as a young kid. But as I got older, and I felt really like I was on borrowed time. I really felt like I'm here on purpose. I don't know what that purpose is. I'm 10 years old. I don't know what's going on, right? But I'm here for a reason. Otherwise, I wouldn't be. Yeah. And so I'm going to make the best out of my life I possibly can. And so I was always in roles of leadership. I was always in roles, even in high school and college. I was like an orientation facilitator in college for 2 years. And like, I was always in those leadership roles, but I never felt like I was a leader. I struggled tremendously with confidence issues, self-esteem issues, because when I was about 6, 7, I think it was right around then, my parents went through an ugly, ugly divorce that went on for almost a decade.
Wow.
And it was just, I felt like a tennis ball, just being popped across the court, one side to the other side, And so finally my father took custody of me and he raised me all by himself. And he worked for UPS for 33 years as a shop steward. So he was a mechanic. And when I was like 12 years old, I was mowing lawns, and then I was working at the grocery store, pulling carts. And then, I eventually built up this strong work ethic. And so I was never afraid to work, and I always had a couple bucks in my pocket. And so I would accelerate at work because I wasn't afraid to do it. And that led me into my professional career at a local hospital. I graduated college right when 9/11 hit. So nobody was hiring, and the world was really in at war, really.
Yeah.
So it was a very unsettled time and uncertain time, but my uncle was able to get me into this local hospital. He was pretty affluent in it. And we worked, me and my little buddy that sits next to me on my shoulder, right? Well, I worked my ass up. I was there 8 years, got my master's degree. And when I first got there, they didn't give me anything. They were like, you're going to be checking insurances, and we know who you're related to. So there was a little bit of resentment there because they kind of had to take me.
Yeah.
And that wasn't fun. But I moved around and worked my way up into an assistant director position in the Children's Hospital for the Sudden Infant Death Syndrome Center. So for those folks that don't know what SIDS is, it's when a baby dies under the age of 1 year old with no cause.
Yeah.
The autopsy comes back pretty much blank, and they base it, they label it SIDS, right? So very rewarding. It's going to sound a little strange, but a very rewarding position, but a very sad position. So my role there was to not only raise funds for the center, so fundraising, but I was able to take that money and create 4 really cool events for all the families in the state of New Jersey that lost a baby to SIDS. So there was a big memorial, and then we would do a summer event and a fall event. But this fundraising event I really enjoyed because I learned marketing. I learned design. I learned all these things. And I'll never forget it. Z100, one of the biggest radio stations on the planet, sponsored one of my events. And I knew at that point, like, I need to make this the big one.
Yeah.
And so my buddy, who was a designer at the time, graphic designer at the time, kind of sat me down and taught me design. And he did all the work for me for that event, but I got bit by the design bug after that. The event was great. And I after that, I convinced my boss to get me the design programs, and so that I could do everything in-house. So I spent 3 years in that position further on, designing all the events in-house and coordinating all of that stuff. And then eventually the hospital kind of got tight. 2008 hit, economic crisis. People were getting thrown around like crazy and fired and let go and all of that. And they came to me and said, Henry, you may stay here at the first of the year, but you will become someone's secretary, or you could leave. Now, here I am, master's degree.
Yeah.
And I got this side hustle that's really kicking some ass. And I said, you know what? I got to think about this one, because this is the true meaning of when you get to the T in the road and you go left or right. Like I was 25, 6 at the time. And this could be a big career move for me. Right. So I'll never forget it. I went to my uncle's office. He owns a big construction company, and he was the one that got me the job. So I said, you know what, out of respect, let me go here and let me ask him what I should do. Cause I really wasn't sure, because the business was making money, but like, was it enough to sustain my lifestyle? And he said to me, well, what do you want to do? I said, well, what if I quit the hospital and come work for you for a little bit? And I think the little bit rubbed him the wrong way.
He's like, you're in or you're out.
Yeah. So he said, well, what would you do here? And I said, well, I don't know. Put me with cousin Joe. Like I'll do whatever he does and be able to. He's like, no, it doesn't work that way. We work on like $100 million jobs. Like if you came in and you misbid it or something screwed up and it came back on you, like, how am I supposed, right? It's not going to be fun. So he said, but listen, let me see what I could do. I'll get back to you. Just give me a couple days. Week 1, week 2, week 3. Now I'm getting scared. Right. And the best thing that ever happened to me, Michelle, was him never getting back to me.
Yeah.
And I said, you know what? I'm out. And so I gave my 2 weeks. Well, I gave my notice, and I left. And the first of the year, I remember walking out of my little tiny apartment. I didn't even barely had furniture. I was designing off of a laptop that didn't even have a mouse. I had the mouse pad on the laptop that I was designing for hours, 20-hour days. And first year I did 248,000, close to $250,000 all by myself. Wow. Just busting my ass. I had a girlfriend who's now my wife, but I barely saw her. Quality of life is awful.
Yeah.
I was new money because I grew up very humble, right. My father, but I was torn as I grew up. And I think we can get into this conversation. I was torn. When I would go up and visit my uncle, it was like visiting the lifestyles of the rich and famous. And then I would go back to my father where we would live in I'm not going to say squalor, but I'm going to say squalor because my father was very miserly. He still is to this day. Not to us. Like he's very generous to me and my wife and my son, but like he lives bare bones minimum, like still has his first car that he had,
yeah.
And so I struggled with that, trying to find my own identity growing up. And so when I finally started to make some money, I said, I don't want to live like that. I want to live like that.
Yeah.
Pointing to my Uncle Joe. And I did. And I thought I was doing the right things. I thought I was proving myself. I thought I was making people proud, but behind closed doors, I was actually creating so much resentment and spite that I basically lost my family because of it.
Right.
And to this day, it was the cost of, James Brown says this the best. It was the cost to pay. I paid the cost to be the boss.
Right.
And unfortunately, it took my family away from me and created a lot of ruckus to this day, even, and I just say to myself, I don't want to see this happen to anybody else. I don't want to see this happen to my son. God forbid he wants to start a business one day. So I've kind of restructured myself over the past 14 years of being in business. And I would say the past 5, Michelle, have been the most fulfilling because I feel like I'm on the right rail. I'm doing the right things for the right reasons. And, getting into branding, I think one of the big things that I'm on a mission for is to help other entrepreneurs find the clarity, get the confidence, and make a major impact in this world in a positive way before we depart physically. Yeah. And that's, if you were to ask me why I do what I do, it's that right there. And it just so happened that I do this through brand strategy and design. So that's it in a nutshell. I thought I was going to go faster, but
that's okay. That's okay. I think there's a lot of valuable stuff in there. And also, I mean, you are not the first entrepreneur to come on this show and be like, oh, I got all the money and then it messed my life up. Like you were definitely not the first one. And we talk a lot about kind of how those limiting beliefs don't go away just because your bank account's full. So, thank you for giving us another example for folks listening who think that that's going to fill the void and just fix things, because it doesn't necessarily do that.
Now, I have a celebrity client. I won't say his name, but he texted me on Sunday. Sunday was Father's Day. And he wrote to me, he said, I wrote him. I said, Happy Father's Day, bro. And he wrote back. He said, Happy Father's Day, brother. He said, we're one of the good ones. And he said, I'll read it to you. Hold on.
I love it.
It was really, really, I'll never forget it. He said, this is coming from a guy that, he does $5 million a week in revenue.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't even know what that looks like. Right. But he said, enjoy the day, man. He's got a son a year older than mine. Yeah. He said, enjoy the day, man. Kiddos are the best gift ever. No amount of fame, money, and success compared. $1 million, because he's from Italy, $1 million never made me cry.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that, I just said, whoa, that's coming from a dude that never has to worry about money again.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's because it's all about evoking the emotion, right? And I mean, you do branding, so that well, that we're chasing the emotion that it's triggering when we're chasing money and we're chasing the void and we're chasing kind of that fulfillment. But you don't understand, especially for those people who are listening who don't have kids, like it's a game changer in a larger way than you could ever have imagined. And you become laser focused when they come into the world on what your values are, which I wonder, I guess my question is, from a branding perspective, when you're working with your clients, did that change that? Like how you were going after that?
Yeah. So totally. So, I'm a heavily tattooed bald guy from New Jersey. So I come across pretty, if you saw me from afar, you'd say, this guy, right? But then when you get to know me, they're like, oh, wow, I would have never known in a million years based on your outer appearance that your inner appearance was this.
Yeah.
And I used to get that a lot. And I remember I was at this conference and this guy comes up to me and he says, oh, I've been listening to your stuff for a while now and I love it. It's great. But I got to tell you, when I first met you, I thought you were, or before I got to know you, I thought you were a giant jerk. And this guy standing next, and so then Michelle, I started apologizing for it. I was like, oh, I'm sorry. I said, I get that a lot, This guy next to me says to me, don't ever apologize for that ever again.
No.
He said, that's not your problem. That's his problem.
That's his perception. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, coming through your lens, coming through the lens of him at you.
Right. Yeah. And so what was happening was, what I realized was I was coming across very tough and strong and I was broken inside.
Yeah.
I really was at the time. And what was happening was I was attracting the same type of client, but they would give it to me back 10 times harder than I gave it to them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And when I started to finally invest into coaching and I found myself an awesome mentor, he said, it's no surprise, Henry, that you're getting these clients because look at the energy that you're putting out.
Right. Right.
And until you correct that, you're going to continue to get these types of clients. And so what I realized was, once I got my head out of my ass and my ego checked,
right.
Yeah. Right. I realized that nobody cared about my money. Nobody cared about the cars I drove. Nobody cared about any of that stuff. They cared about how much I cared about getting the results that they wanted.
Right. Right. It's the what's in it for them factor, but on steroids, especially when you come to a personality brand, I would assume is like, it's really what's in it for them on some level, but also you understanding and dissecting the what's in it for them. And, your status is irrelevant at that point.
Exactly.
It opens doors. Exactly. I'm sure it opens doors on some levels, right? Because you're clout, but that's not necessarily tied to the cars and the houses and all that stuff.
No. And I really want to make this relevant to the show because this is the Resilient Entrepreneur podcast, so,
right.
First year of business, we did well. It gave me the confidence to continue. But when I got to year 5, Michelle, I was out of the niche that I was serving, which is like the nightclub industry at the time.
Right.
So I was out of that. I was married. I was getting older. I didn't want to be in that scene anymore because it's not for married people.
It's not. Nope.
Right. And so I was getting out of that scene. My Fiverr just comes out and disrupts the whole design industry.
Mm-hmm.
Now I lost 2 big clients from Hurricane Sandy that came in that stood for about $250,000.
Yeah.
And when they restructured after that storm, they said, we're going to just take everything in house. We're not going to use you anymore. So how do you recoup that money?
That's a lot. Yeah.
It's a lot. And so I go into this horrible tailspin of just self-sabotage. I'm just going to burn this thing to the ground.
Yep.
And then feel sorry for myself and then hopefully figure it out. And luckily I didn't get that far.
Good.
I got to some negative money in my bank account, but I finally said to myself, I need to, and I was holding it all in, Michelle. I didn't want to show my parents. I didn't want to show my wife. I didn't want to show my in-laws.
What a shame.
I'm ashamed around that. I'm ashamed. And so I went to my wife on a Sunday afternoon and said, here's the story. I'm broke. The business is broke. And I don't know what to do. And she said, you need help.
Yeah.
And so she jumps off the bed. Now, before she said you need help.
There's a lot of swearing probably.
She jumps off the bed. She jumps off the bed and goes into my office to bring over the laptop into the bed. She opens up the laptop and I'm like, are we Googling divorce attorneys or are we going to look for help? And so she she helped me find help. Right. And so that's where Russell Brunson came into my world, and I started studying his stuff. And I did not have the money to invest in his coaching, but I invested in his coaching and said, it's not if this works, it's when this works.
Right.
And the irony of it was, we get on a call together, and 15 minutes in, I'm crying, he's crying. And at the end of the conversation, he says, I want to hire you. You're an awesome designer. I have tons of stuff that I need. My stuff is in shambles. Like, I got 6 different designers working for me, and nothing's really getting me. So he said, what could you do for XYZ? And I said, I don't know. Now I'm into him 10 grand. So I got to figure out how to make that money back.
Yeah.
So I said, how's 6? And he goes, okay, give me your PayPal. So he sends me 6 grand. So within a day, I made back the 60% of that investment. Talk about how the universe takes care of you when you bet on yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
A couple months after that, he hits me back again, and he says, we want to get this ClickFunnels brand up to par, and I think you're the guy to do it. So would you think about it? And I said, yeah. And so I spent 2.5 years with him rebranding ClickFunnels.
Mm-hmm.
And about 6 months after that, he hit $100 million in revenue. And that was awesome. So that whole experience kind of catapulted me into the next phase, or the next chapter of this business. And I went another 5 years and hit another growing pain, which was scale.
Yeah. It's hard.
I was still doing everything myself. I was the salesperson. I was the marketer. I was the delivery person, because print back then was still pretty big.
Right.
I was doing everything. And then my wife was like, when do you want to hang out?
Yeah.
And I was like, well, after this menu design, like, I didn't know what to tell her. And finally, this is where Russell was kind of helping me on the side. And he said, you need to replace yourself. You need to get out of the designer role if you want to scale this puppy.
Yeah.
And I did. And I started to build out my team, and I started to realize that you need systems in place and processes. And I didn't have that. And I was getting bigger and better and busier. And I got 2 big clients one time at the same time, where their projects kind of fell through the cracks, because I wasn't set up for the heftiness of scope.
Right.
And everything came barreling down. I had to refund like 40 grand in a day, which put me into a huge deficit. I was 40 grand in debt overnight.
Yeah. Which hurts. And I think people get scared to scale because it's painful to scale on some levels,
it's
right?
Scary AF.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, oh, wait, I have to relinquish control of this thing that I've had control over for 10 years, for good, bad, or ugly, whatever it may be. But, I think it sounds like it yielded you some pretty damn good results in the long haul, though.
Well, shortly after that disaster, I took my business extremely serious, because I said, this is going to be how you make your livelihood.
Yeah.
And you have no right to promise and underdeliver.
Right.
And so I spent that year, probably, I didn't even have the money. I got some money infused to me from savings. I didn't want to tap into it, but I did, because I believed in myself, and I believed in this business, and I wasn't done. I wasn't going to throw in the towel. Everything that happened was because of me.
Right.
So I said, you need to take responsibility for that. And so I did. So I took money that I had, and it was gifted. And my father told me, he said, listen, this is money for when I die. So remember that.
Take it back.
Like you don't have to pay me back, but you can't come to me next year and need another 40.
Exactly. This is it. You got off.
Yeah. So he made that abundantly clear. And I remember telling him, so I was getting the money kind of installed to me, and I got to about 32,000, and I told him, I don't want it. Just keep the 8. I don't need it. I'm going to get my ass out of this. because I was reinvesting that money in, right? And so what I did was I hired somebody, help me with my processes and systems, help me with the, right? I built out a stronger team. I got better designers and better copywriters and better, right? And that year, believe it or not, that year, I got the 2 Comma Club Award. Nice. And the 2 Comma Club Award is when you have a marketing funnel using the ClickFunnels program that generated over $1 million. We did $1.3 million that year.
Awesome.
And that's when I said to myself, like, don't count yourself out, baby. Especially when you feel like all the doors are shut and nothing's going your way. Like, don't focus on what you don't have, focus on what you do have. And what I did have was I went back to my childhood, Michelle.
Yeah.
I went back to my grit. I went back to my work ethic. I went back to my people skills.
Yeah.
And I said, we're going to make this happen. And so now I have the same team that I've had for the past 5 years, very little turnover. And like, I've built this little family. So now what we do is we focus on helping personality brands that want to scale, that want to get out of their own way, want to replace themselves, get to that 7-figure plus mark by brand strategy and really that confidence that they can actually do it. Confidence and clarity. I think when you ask any of my clients, what's the big takeaway out of the program? They say clarity and confidence. You gave me the clarity to focus on what I needed to do, and you gave me the confidence to do it. And I always tell everybody that I come across, when you're working off a full tank of confidence, there's nothing you can't do.
Yeah, there isn't. There's such a value. I mean, like you said earlier, all of the stuff happened because of you, right? Like, and it's that's the thing is, when I run through with clients, because I'm a business strategist, we go through the operations and the streamlining, we go through the marketing plan, the operations plan, but people always forget that personal development plan, right? Like, if you're not looking at your own shit, good luck scaling, because you're going to be at war with yourself the entire time. And sometimes you can't figure it out by yourself, which is why you and I exist in this world to help walk people through that. So, I mean, talk to me about, the process, because I see a lot of people skip the step and a lot of people skip the branding step, myself included when I came out of the gate, but now absolutely not. But, so talk to me about your process a little bit with folks.
Yeah. So branding at its core is the gut feeling that people get about you, your product or service, right? Let's just call it what it is, right? It's not your logo or any of that. So, so it's that gut feeling. So that's what we want to establish first and foremost. But the second thing that I want you to pay attention to is the process and to get you to that great branding position, right? Because I see a lot of my clients, they have a great product or service, not positioned properly, hence the lack of confidence, hence why they're not charging what they should be.
Right.
So the reason why I got the brand doctor name or coined the brand doctor from one of my branding buddies was my process. And that's diagnosis, prescription, and then application.
Good.
So it's very much like how a doctor would perform surgery. He's going to come in, or she's going to come in, and she's going to do a thorough discovery of what is going on. Right. Where you are right now, where do you want to go? What's blocking that? Right. Then we're going to customize a prescribed strategy for that.
Customize.
Go
figure. Yeah, and I say that with love, because everybody wants like a repeat process that yields the same thing, and you can just take it and pick it up and put it on things. But I'm very similar to you in my process, where it's current state analysis and then customize the result, because it's customized to them, I would assume.
Right. So the framework, I will say this, like the framework is correct. Like building a house, right? You're not going to put the roof on before you put the foundation in, right? So the framework is concrete, but how people build homes are very different from, like, my neighbor has a very different house than the house that we, and that's where it becomes customized, right? So
exactly.
We customize it to their brand, their business, what they want to do with their mission and purpose, right? And then we have the team to apply it. So there's a lot of folks out there that just do the strategic part.
Yes.
We do the strategic part, but now we have an option where you could come on board and we'll build the whole thing out for you. Like, we've built you the blueprint. Here it is. If you want to go find another contractor, go ahead. But we have the team to do this, and we could do it in 90 days or less.
Right.
You know, up to you totally. And so a lot of our strategy clients come in and they do the full program, which is the Brand Accelerator program. And again, it's a 90-day process, but it gets you that clarity, that confidence, that position. Now you know what your revenue goals are. Now you know what your efficiency goals are. Now you know what your awareness goals are and how you're going to market and what platforms you're going to market on and who your ideal clients are.
Oh my gosh. Michelle, can we talk about that for a second, Henry?
Let's do it with the time we have left. Let's do it.
Do you know how many times I get clients, and I know you can appreciate this, and if you've heard me on the podcast, this is one of my biggest pet peeves, is who the F is your ideal client? And if you do not know, again, guys, I've said it before, stop listening to this podcast and go figure it out, right? Because it is a huge part of orchestrating the entire thing. And it amazes me that folks don't understand that.
Well, this week, as of this recording, I do a lot of live streaming. I do a show every Monday. I do a show on YouTube every Wednesday. And Tuesday, Thursdays, I do IG lives. On Instagram. And this week's theme is building your influence on social. And one of the big problems that I see people have when they're trying to build influence on social is they go too broad. Yeah. They go too broad. They don't know who they're talking to. So if you don't know who you're talking to, your audience doesn't know either. Well,
right. And I mean, and it's amazing the level of resistance that I get from some folks when we're trying to do that. And it's a fear, right? It's rooted most of the times in fear from like, I don't want to narrow myself down so much, or I wanted this, I wanted that. When in my mind, it's a living, breathing thing anyway. So the same person that maybe I was speaking to at year 1 may not be the same person I'm speaking to at year 10, and that's okay. But again, like, you have to have a baseline strategy with that.
Yes. So, I'm going to speak to, because I don't know exactly who the audience is, but I'm going to speak to my ideal customer. Right. This is a customer that is, I like to say client too. Client, customer, client. Right. My client's been in business for a few years now, and they want to level everything up. Right. They don't know how to brand themselves to that specific person, because they don't know who that person is, like we just mentioned, right? So my question is, let's go back into your client roster and let's look at a client that you served at the highest level, that got the best result, that you thoroughly enjoyed.
Exactly.
And do a profile of that person. Right. Do a profile like the FBI profiles.
Exactly. It's the same sort of thing. Sort of thing. It's
the same thing. I want you to do a psychographic profile of that person. I want you to do a demographic profile. That's the easy part. Right. But I want you to ask these questions. What kind of car does he drive, or her? What kind of watch do they wear? What kind of clothes do they wear? Where do they go out for to eat? Right. And then here's the big question. What does this say about this person?
Right.
Why are they buying from your competitors and not you? What is your competitors doing to earn their business? What aren't they doing? Yeah. What could they be doing better that you could do?
Right. Exactly. Right? Yeah.
You get in there to carve that thing. We're doing a really cool thing. I'm just going to let the cat out of the bag. So I have a partner who does the podcast with me. I do some solo episodes, but this guy, he wants to get better. He's actually a client of mine. He wants to get better in front of video, and he wants to get more confident in how his thought leadership, right? So guy's a genius in what he does. So I said, why don't you come be a co-host on my show? Come on, let's go. I'll throw you right into the fire. So I'm learning Italian because I've been to Italy a few times, and we're going next year for my wife's 40th, and I want to learn the language. That's always thing, right? So this app that I use really stepped up, and they gamified the whole process now, right? So I'm telling my client this today, and he goes, "You're really into this, aren't you?" I go, "Yeah." Like, this is so cool. Like, I could be playing video games or I could do this, right? So I do this. So he said, what if we do this for your business? So now he's giving me advice, and he's my client, right? And I'm like, oh, I'm listening. I'm listening. So he's giving me some advice, and I said, how about this? I love that idea. How about this? What if we gamify our content strategy?
Right.
So he says, oh, I see where you're going with this. I said, why don't we do this? Why don't we incentivize our viewership? And if they show up for a month straight, we'll have little code words, and we'll dump those code words into different parts of the live stream. You won't know when they come.
Easter eggs.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you call it out in the comments, we will put you in a pot for a free strategy session with me. And those are $500. Like, one-on-one brand assessment, $500.
Nice.
And so he was like, dude, that's awesome. So we're going to start it literally tomorrow, Wednesday. And in 30 days, we're going to have a few really cool gifts and giveaways. Maybe you didn't make it to the end. Maybe we'll throw you a little something. But if you made it to the end, you're going to get a strategy session with me, that has a value of $500. So those are some of the things that we're doing that's different and fun and getting people to, listen, business doesn't have to be boring. It doesn't have to be a chore. It doesn't have to be scary. You can make it as fun as you'd like. So that's sort of what I'm doing moving forward, is like, how can I bring in my fun personality into this and really just beef up the program even better than what it is right now.
Yeah. I mean, if it was up to me, my point of view is that you're just getting started, my dear.
I feel it.
Because,
I feel it.
I mean, and you're so right. And we talk a lot on the podcast about, purposefully infusing joy into things and actually remembering. I just did an episode, I think last week, on like, what is play? Everything does not have to have
I listened to that one.
Measurable outcome. And I'm guilty of it myself.
I thought of me playing this language teaching app. I was like, this is how I play.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're conscious of it and you're making a decision to do it, which, I absolutely love. So, I mean, I could go on for hours with you. I mean, just in the branding, I spent a lot of time doing branding for PayPal and lots of different things. So I love where you're at. I love your energy, but I want to leave some for people to go find you. So tell them where they can go consume your stuff, friend.
Yeah. So I have a really cool masterclass that we just redid. And if you go to Unique Designz, it's a Z at the end, not an S.net /level up my branding, you will get access to that masterclass. It's about 22 minutes long. It's nothing that's going to put you to sleep. Obviously, my energy at this point.
Yeah, you're not going to sleep.
You're not going to sleep on that, but it's going to really help you. I really synthesize down my process, and I show some really cool case studies on how I've been able to turn some big brands around, personality brands specifically, and get them to 6- and 7-figure clients. And they're doing some amazing things. So you can check that out. And then I have a podcast called the Brand Doctor Podcast, which I would love to have you on, Michelle.
Yeah, I would love to be on. I was checking it out, and I think it's great. I think it's a conversation.
I would love to let's continue this convo on my show, and we'll stream it live, and then we'll get it on all the platforms like we typically do. So yeah, that would be awesome. So the podcast is called the Brand Doctor Podcast. Go have a hear.
Yeah, definitely, guys. Go over there and check it out, please, because he knows what he's talking about. And, we will continue this conversation. But thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you, Michelle. It was a pleasure.